Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of Allerdale Borough Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. My name is Lee Jardine and I'm the Democratic Services Officer, and for the purpose of this meeting, I'm also the host. I'll be assisting the committee with the use of technology to manage the process of the meeting. I will not have any control of the meeting, and the meeting will not begin until instructed by the Chair. The meeting is currently being live streamed and a recording will be made available afterwards. Everyone has indicated they're attending the meeting has now joined, and the meeting is now locked. Shortly, I'll hand you over to the Chair, but first, introductions. Can I ask the attendees to introduce themselves, first of all, starting with the members. Councillor Daniels.
Councillor Alan Daniels, good afternoon.
Councillor Granger.
Councillor Malcolm Granger.
Councillor Heaslip.
Hello, good afternoon. Michael Heaslip, Councillor.
Councillor Greenie.
Councillor Ian Greenie, I'll be chairing the meeting today.
Councillor Holliday.
Councillor Holliday here.
Councillor Horsley.
Good afternoon, Councillor Daniel Horsley.
Councillor Kirkbride.
Good afternoon, Councillor Adrian Kirkbride.
Councillor McCarran Holmes.
Good afternoon, County McCarran Holmes.
Councillor Scott.
Good afternoon, Councillor Paul Scott.
Councillor Semple.
Good afternoon, Councillor Andrew Semple.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the officers. Alex Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon, Alex Fitzgerald, Corporate Policy Manager.
Ian Hind.
Hello, I'm Ian Hind, Policy Officer for Scrutiny and Partnerships.
Paul Taylor.
Good afternoon, Paul Taylor, Programme Manager for Maryport Regeneration.
Helen Brownlee.
I'm Helen Brownlee, I'm Heritage Action Zone Officer.
Steve Holland.
Afternoon, Stephen Holland, Capital Projects.
Chris Fleming.
Good afternoon, I'm Chris Fleming and I'm the Legal Officer.
Gail Roach.
Good afternoon, I'm Gail Roach, I'm the Democratic Services Manager.
And Lindsay Tomlinson.
Good afternoon, Lindsay Tomlinson, Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you all for your introductions. Please can participants remain on mute throughout the meeting. Members, to speak, please can use the raised hand icon and only speak when requested by the Chair. To vote on items, if necessary, the Chair will ask myself as Democratic Services Officer to go through each member alphabetically. Each member will reply with their name and their vote. So I will now formally hand you over to the Chair to start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Welcome everyone to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Friday 28th of August 2020. With that, I'd like to open the meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, the minutes for the previous meeting. To sign as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of July 2020. Do we have a proposer and seconder for those, please? Or do we have any issues to raise with regards to the minutes?
I'll move the minutes.
Thank you, Malcolm. Do we have a seconder, please? Ms. Councillor Daniels. Thank you. Just to confirm that, Lee, Councillor Daniels did second the minutes.
Thank you. And members, if you have any issues with the minutes, can you please use the raised hand? If not, we'll proceed.
Yeah. Item 1 closed. Item 2, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Annison, Councillor Bell and Councillor Crouch. Councillor Semple is subbing today for Councillor Crouch. Thank you.
Thank you. No other apologies? Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, declaration of interests. Councillor staff to give notice of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest or any other interest and the nature of that interest relating to any item on the agenda in accordance with the adopted code of conduct. Do we have any declarations of interest on today's items, please? Thank you. Item 3 closed. Item 4, any questions?
No, Chair.
No questions coming in. Item 4 closed. Item 5, public participation. To hear representations from members of the public on items which appear on the agenda, submitted in writing or by electronic mail no later than 5 p.m. 2 working days before the meeting. Do we have any public participation?
We don't, Chair, no.
Thank you. Item 5 closed. Moving on to item 6. This is a brief update by several officers from the Maryport Regeneration Programme. It's captured in the actual agenda on pages 7 to 20, and we're going to hear 2 short presentations from the officers. The first one will be by Ellen Brownlee with regard to the Heritage Action Zone, and the second one is by Paul Taylor, who will cover Future High Streets Fund and governance. The item is for noting and the progress of the actual regeneration process. And with that, I'll hand you over to Helen Brownlee, if that's okay, Helen.
Okay, yes, thank you, Ian. I will try and share my screen. Oh. Right, yes, Maryport's Heritage Action Zone is, and that we're calling the HAS, was announced and launched just last week, but it was the success of it we were told about in April, but it's a historic England funded project, and they insisted that there should be no announcements during lockdown, which is why it's only just been made public. And in fact, the national scheme still hasn't been made public. So the essence or idea is that we use Maryport's unique heritage as a catalyst for regeneration. So as a quick background, in 2017, the council decided that Maryport needed help and extra investment, and commissioned Arup to look at issues and options. They then produced the Maryport delivery plan, which identified key focus areas, one of which was Maryport's High Street, which is actually not the High Street, but Senhouse Street and Curzon Street and the immediate area. So fortuitously, soon after this, 2 High Street initiatives were announced, one being the Future High Street Fund and the other being the HAS. And we were successful at first round of both, and we've now been successful at the final round of the HAS, and Paul will talk about the Future High Streets in a bit. So I thought what I'd do to start with is show an engagement film that was made during lockdown, which briefly outlines all of the capital projects. So if I unshare my screen, will you, Lee, be able to?
Yeah, I'll be able to sort that out for you.
I don't know. Right. Unshare. Right. So Lee, will you be able to show the film?
Can everyone see that?
I think so, when it starts. Yeah.
Allerdale Borough Council have the opportunity to secure funding to undertake major works within Maryport. A team of consultants have been appointed to work with the council and the community to develop ideas for what the major works would entail. These objectives are to increase footfall along the High Street and to make Maryport more attractive to businesses, residents and visitors, while supporting the longevity of the High Street. Previous engagement was undertaken by consultants early in the year to understand the community's needs. If you wish to comment, there are a number of ways you can do so. These will be shared at the end of the video. Public realm. Connecting the route from Maryport train station through the High Street to the harbour and the promenade is a key focus for the public realm proposals. Key pedestrian junctions along Curzon Street are reviewed as part of the overall scheme, as well as the parking requirements for the town centre. Connecting these spaces along the High Street by using a cohesive visual style which is easily identifiable to Maryport is a key aspiration for the project. Due to this, many of the interventions are replicated across the scheme and include widening footpaths and reducing carriageway widths to enhance the pedestrian environment, the creation of 2 gateway features for visitors entering the town from the north and south along Curzon Street, the introduction of ornamental and tree planting where possible to soften the hard urban grain of the streetscape, and the creation of slight kinks and the introduction of raised tables in the road along Senhouse Street to calm traffic. Matching new finger post traffic junctions along the route from the station to the harbour, and the installation of benches and seating opportunities which are nestled into planting pockets. To create raised pedestrian crossings at key road junctions and to retain on-street parking for existing residents. Vacant unit. The vision looks to address the number of vacant units, especially at first floor within the town centre. A repurposed grant fund is proposed, which works with the local building owners to upgrade their first floor accommodation into high-quality office or residential units. The aim is to draw new users to Maryport, while increasing footfall and demand along the high street. Shop fronts. Alongside looking to occupy vacant properties, the proposal aims to offer grant support for shopfront improvements along Senhouse Street. The aspiration is to visually improve the overall impression of Maryport for business owners, local residents and visitors. Key buildings have been identified for improvements, including the Town Hall, Maritime Museum, Head and Foods and 66 Crosby Street. The improvements to these properties include external works to bring them more in line with the preferred aesthetic for Maryport Town Centre, and the internal works that will improve the access to these buildings. Empire Yard. Previous public consultation has identified a local aspiration for a market and a space to hold Maryport events. Empire Yard creates the space for these activities to take place, both during the day and at night. Alongside a flexible covered space which can be adapted to house a market, community cinema screening and small music events, it is surrounded by a number of commercial units of various sizes. These are typically focused at food and beverage units, but can accommodate both start-up businesses and more established businesses. The Carlton. A landmark property along the High Street, it has been vacant for a number of years. Bringing this property back into active use is key for the vision for Maryport. The proposal relocates the theatre space from the Wave to the Carlton, with the aspiration to drive more evening economy along Senhouse Street. It also houses accommodation for shared, working and small private rentable workshops and/or offices. Unlike the event space formed within Empire Yard, which is focused at food and drink, the rentable space and the ground floor event space is focused towards the arts and craft movement in support of the work by local artists and the settlement. Demolition of the neighbouring property is proposed to form level access, a courtyard and new build to accommodate further theatre and event space requirements. Christchurch. A landmark and well-loved property within Maryport, Christchurch has been vacant for some time. The proposal looks to bring this building back into public use by converting the church into a museum and gallery space. The proposal includes the introduction of a mezzanine floor to increase the floor area and a viewing platform over the Solway coast. The Wave. A relatively modern building within Maryport, the Wave is an underperforming leisure facility within the town. The proposal reconfigures the Wave and removes the performance space, which is then relocated to the Carlton. It introduces a new swimming pool in its place. Aspirations for a swimming pool have been widely voiced by the residents of Maryport, and the proposal for the Wave looks to build on the existing infrastructure to bring this offer back to Maryport.
We would like to hear your feedback. You can do this by commenting below,
Right, thanks, Lee. I will try and share my screen again. Right, yeah. yeah, the reason I wanted to show that film, which shows the capital projects of both schemes, both high street schemes, is because it shows that the variety of building refurbishments and mix of uses together. We've been lucky to have Steve Holland, who put together the projects for both of the programmes, and he's kind of designed them to complement each other and provide a wide range of different reasons to come into town, so that the impact of the whole programme should be much greater than the sum of its parts. So anyway, Paul will explain far more about the High Street project. The Heritage Action Zone project, as I said, it's a Historic England funded programme, and they've identified, this first bit is a cut and paste from their original guidance, they've identified 3 main strands. The first being the capital programme, which is a more traditional sort of regeneration of historic buildings and streets and improving the appearance and encouraging greater use. But also we're putting together a cultural programme, which will be a calendar of arts and cultural events and activities designed to increase activity of all sorts and in the high street and enjoyment of Maryport's heritage. Community engagement is the third strand. Community engagement is generally a part of any regeneration scheme, but Historic England want us to sort of try harder and make more effort to try and reach the absolute maximum number of people we can reach to get them on board and involved with both the projects and the heritage generally. So this map shows the HAS zone, and the capital programme involves the refurbishment of 4 key buildings and the improvement, well, quite a considerable shopfront improvement scheme for a number of the worst shopfronts, and also a small public realm and signage scheme. So two of the 4 main capital projects, building projects, are these Allerdale-owned buildings, Maryport Town Hall and the Maritime Museum. They both require quite a lot of essential repairs and refurbishment, but also the Town Hall has, as you're probably all aware, has a fairly awkward sort of access and entrance, and the ground floor layout is not that great. So we'll be working together with the customer service centres and architects to produce some options to improve all those things. And the Maritime Museum similarly requires a lot of repairs, but also it would be nice to be able to reinstate the front door in that corner where it should be, and obviously originally was, if we can make the levels work. And the top floor at the moment is not accessible by the public because of fire regs. So also we have an ambition to try and create a fire escape out the back to enable the building to be better used. So Heron Foods is probably one of the least attractive buildings in Senhouse Street at the moment, but it's lost most of its architectural features, and it was clearly originally 3 buildings, but now this has been made into one with a fairly unattractive large shop front, or wide shop front, with a big fascia board and signage, which effectively cuts the building in half. It's also lost its first floor bay windows, and the top floor windows have been boarded up, which is never a good look. So the plan is to effectively remove all of the whole shop front and recreate the appearance of at least 3 separate shop fronts that better reflect the history of the building. Also to put back some bay windows at first floor, and to unboard the windows at top floor, which actually are still there and just need repairing mostly. 68 Crosby Street is the building with the black shop front on the picture. And this is key to accessing the upper floors of the rest of this building and those of the Midland Bank chambers, and the whole of the upper floors have planning permission for to be converted into visitor accommodation, but this is the key to accessing them because this is the only ground floor entrance. So the proposal is to convert this building into entrance, reception, bar and access to bedrooms, accessible bedrooms upstairs by introducing a lift as well. Yeah, the shopfront improvement grant scheme we're proposing should target the worst of the shopfronts. The pictures I put up here I just put in because the architect who put together that film that you've just seen chose these, but actually the ones here aren't by any means the worst. But anyway, we'll be commissioning a comprehensive assessment and shopfront design guide in order to inform which are the worst shopfronts and the ones that will be targeted first for grants. And it will also identify design constraints in order to try and ensure maximum quality. There's a very small element of public realm works in the budget, but until we know what's happening with the future High Street scheme, which Paul will talk about in a minute, that which has a much larger public realm element, we won't be determining what these involve really yet. So the cultural programme element is to be a 4-year programme of events and activities in and around the High Street, with the aims of making arts, culture and heritage more interesting and accessible to as many people as possible, using events and activities to considerably increase footfall and the amount of different activities in town. We're hoping to ensure that the programme is such that it will also encourage visitors and tourists to Maryport, which is, well, it's been identified as necessary in order to properly regenerate Maryport. And linked to that, the aim is to raise Maryport's profile and try and give it a unique selling point. So the cultural programme is not to be designed by the council. It's to be led by a cultural consortium made up of members from local cultural organisations. So we've got together a group that represent the settlement, the West Coast Art Networks, Senna House Museum, the Maritime Museum, other local architects, artists, Allerdale Borough Council and Cumbria County Council officers, and we're hoping to get other people on board as well, in particular people, representatives from funding bodies such as the Arts Council, but also other parts of the arts communities such as theatre and music. So soon after the group got together, they decided the words cultural consortium didn't really suit their aims and sounded a bit exclusive and not really down to earth. So they elected to call themselves Creative Maryport, and and designed the logo that's at the bottom right there, so in order to create some identity. So the cultural programme is being drawn up at the moment, but it should be available in autumn, and it's likely to include plans for festivals, street theatre, pop-up restaurants, fish restaurants, for example, heritage and art trails, and improving the existing ones with a bit of augmented reality and an oral history recording project and some storytelling. I mean, these are all big themes that the schemes, more detailed schemes, will be drawn up that are more specific than this, obviously. So, and one of the ideas is to create some street art using local people and their perceptions of Maryport's heritage, but to be designed and created by professional artists in order to maximise the quality. In fact, we've just submitted a pilot bid for a piece of street art working on this basis. So the idea could lead to a street art trail and attract visitors in its own right, in theory. I mean, there are a number of street art destinations around the world now, and they're becoming very popular, apparently. The nearest ones I know of are the Waterford in Ireland and Aberdeen, but there'll be other smaller ones, no doubt. But as far as we know, there's none in Cumbria yet, or the Northwest. So we could, if we go down this line, be the first. So community engagement, as I mentioned, the aims is to engage as many people as possible, particularly people who don't currently get involved or haven't historically got involved in activities, community activities in Maryport or regeneration programmes before. So both to involve people in the projects themselves, but also in a more general way to increase awareness of and pride of in Maryport's heritage and history. With the overall aims, of course, of significantly increasing the amount of community activity, both in quantity and quality and diversity, and also to empower more members of the community with confidence and leadership skills in order to try and continue organising more activities beyond the 4-year programme to leave a positive legacy. So means of communication, well, basically we're trying to think of everything. So please add any ideas you've got. So using social media, obviously that of all types, existing websites. There is the new business group, Creative Maryport, are proposing to create a community website. A bit similar to the ones that have been created in Cockermouth and Keswick, with very regular, constantly monitored with very regular updates of all that's happening, and updating on all the regeneration programme as well, of course, but also to be very interactive, to get feedback and to do very quick surveys, etc. Obviously, not everybody uses social media or the internet even, so we're also going to use as many traditional methods as we can. We've got a regular slot in Maryport Matters now, to the quarterly magazine, so to update on everything that's happening, and we will be using the other direct emails to all the groups we can think of to contact, and the more traditional discussion groups, workshop, public meetings, notice boards, posters, etc., local radio. So some of those may not be in person for a while. So any more ideas, please add to. And I just thought I'd finish on a nice picture of Maryport's heritage and natural assets. So thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for that, Ellen. Paul, would you like to continue with your presentation on future high streets? Paul?
Okay, just bear with me 1 minute, please.
Okay, I thought I'd lost you there for a moment.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, right. Right, so I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview here because there are quite a number of slides to go through here. So I'll focus on the ones that perhaps weren't highlighted as much in the initial film that you saw. So there are 6 schemes within the Future High Street programme. We applied for funding on the 30th of June, and we're due to hear in November whether or not we've been successful. So ultimately, unlike the HAS scheme that Helen was talking about, for this scheme at the moment, we don't yet know whether or not we've actually got funding. We may get all of the funding, we may get none, or we may get just a proportion of the funding, dependent upon the assessment by the government office. So that slide there shows a summary of the 6 schemes: the vacant units, Christchurch, the Wave, Empire Yard, and the 5th one there is, I can't actually see that, Public Realm, and the 5th one, let's have a look. Carlton. Yes, Carlton Centre, yes, apologies. So the vacant units, we've got a number of vacant buildings along Senhouse Street and Curzon Street. We're running at the moment at around 20% unoccupied buildings on Senhouse Street and around up to 70% on the first floor. So 20% on the ground floor and up to 70% on the first floor. So this is just an example of one of the empty buildings, the Royal Victoria Hotel, but there are many others in the town. Part of one of our priorities is to try to come up with solutions to this. And that's not necessarily creating lots more retail. We're very much aware that nationally there's a position that people are buying a lot more online. So we are focusing on specific types of interventions on the high street that we think will be successful. In terms of the empty units, what we're proposing is a grant scheme. So we've applied for funding for this grant scheme, which will enable us to provide funding for individual businesses that have empty units. So it may well be that part of the shop or a business premises is empty, or there's an empty flat somewhere that people are interested in applying for funding for. So we're hopeful that the government will support us with that funding in order to turn around some of these empty buildings to become residential units on Senhouse Street and Curzon Street. So the next scheme is Christchurch, and quite an iconic building, and it's quite a sort of famous landmark within Maryport. It's been picked up in a lot of famous artist paintings. We've got a legal agreement now with the owners of the building, and if we do get funded, then we will purchase the building with the aim to convert it into a museum. So the idea would be that we would actually move the museum from the Maritime Museum in its existing location, converting that into an art gallery, and then converting Christchurch into a much more suitable location to display the exhibits that are currently in the museum. Actually, some of the items are not being displayed at the moment because there isn't enough space in the current building, and we've got the support of the committee for the Maritime Museum behind us in terms of our proposal here. So a quick run through some of these images. That shows the mezzanine level that we would want to put in place in Christchurch. There are two views there, plan views of the mezzanine level and the ground floor that would give us a lot more floor space to display the exhibits from the museum. And again, just an artist's impression of what the inside of the building would look like. The next proposal is with regard to the wave. This was something that was highlighted initially by a number of local councillors. We believe that we could improve the services from the wave, which is the leisure centre, the local leisure centre. And so we've applied funding for that purpose. So the idea is of adapting the building currently. Basically, we have to make sure that the building does stack up financially in terms of the intervention that we make, and that financially it washes its face. So we have to make sure that we have, through our business planning, that we've got enough turnover to utilise a building to make it work financially. So the idea is that we plan to convert part of the building into a swimming pool to benefit local residents, and we've got a lot of support from the local swimming club and schools and others to utilise the building for that purpose. However, we still retain refreshment area and other facilities within the building. That's just a plan view of what the building would look like. And externally, you see a number of bikes there, because one of the proposals is that we actually create a cycle hub for the town there, and that we actually hire bikes, which would be probably secured with trackers, However, we could actually hire out e-bikes because we know that cycling is becoming a lot more popular, and we've got some really good cycle routes along the coast. So we will work with a number of a number of stakeholders to encourage people to hire cycles from there. This would encourage more tourists into the area alongside a lot of the other interventions that we're making in the town. The name here we wouldn't retain. There would be, this is just a temporary name that the Empire Yard that our architects came up with. As you can see on that plan view that in purple there, this is fairly central in the town. We're looking for a central location to create a market, a semi-covered market space, because whilst we're not necessarily encouraging development of retail per se, because we know that isn't necessarily proving popular across the country as more people are buying online, we do know that some things are more popular. So particularly local produce, food and beverage, perhaps arts or crafts items as well, dependent upon the take-up. So it would be a flexible market space, and we've got a couple of different options available for that. So as you can see on the drawings on here, you've got quite a large space. So if we purchase this land, then that would enable us to develop quite a large market space and to perhaps have business startup units and enable us to provide facilities for people to start up small businesses in that area. Again, some plan views on there and an artist's impression of what Senhouse Street would look like with some of the changes that are being proposed. That's a big cross-sectional view of the Empire Yard. We could hold small-scale events there if that would prove popular. We have developed a business plan for that, but it's very flexible in terms of the frequency of markets that could be held in that space. Just again, some artist's impression. The two options there for this area are, as you can see on this slide in the corner, a canopy type of arrangement or something which is much more robust. Now, we do know that we've applied for over £16 million, and it's in terms of our advisors, we've been advised that it's unlikely we would get the full funding because they're well oversubscribed. So we were asked to put in a plan B. So the plan B for this would be to have something much more flexible, that sort of canopy arrangement that would be much less costly. So that would enable, if government want to fund us with a lesser amount, that would give them a clear option to support this, but without necessarily the significant build environment there that was being proposed initially in the first plan. The Carlton Cinema was talked about on the video. This is the former Carlton Cinema that's been in the town for over a century and changed hands a number of times, but the plan would be for us to purchase this, and we actually have some plans in place that we would want to pursue. I don't know at this point if Steve may want to say something about the plans.
I can if you want, Paul. I mean, the idea of this is it's a redundant building, but it's a landmark building. Therefore, we're looking to, as Paul said, relocate the entertainment venue out of the Wave to allow the redevelopment of the Wave and slot it in here. And it's a slightly reduced size to appeal to the local market and also not compete with the likes of the Carnegie and other theatre offers in the wider area. But that is, we have a 100-seater event space, food and beverage, box office, some outdoor food and beverage space in a courtyard, but also artist changing rooms, sound booths and rehearsal studios on the ground floor. Then on the first floor, we have a series of fine art type studios and a gallery space. Then on the second floor, we go for more sort of workshop type studios, so metal workers and things like that, which require additional ventilation and facilities which are more appropriate for that level. All let on easy in, easy out terms. with flexible terms in terms of the gallery space. It's a sales commission on what is sold through there. The idea is that the ground floor is run by the ABC events team, and the building is run by the estates teams, but the first and second floor we'd link up with a series of art groups like West Cumbria Arts to support them and for them to support us in the gallery space. And so that's how it sits.
Thank you. Yeah, the artist's impression there does also show we've subsumed the next door building, 28 Senhouse Street, into part of the scheme. We would have some kind of possibly transparent or security fencing along the periphery there, but it just shows we'd have an outside seating area for refreshment as well. So the building next door, number 28, is in a really bad state. It already belongs to Allerdale. So the idea would be we would plan to demolish that to become part of the overall scheme. Public realm, that would be focused on the area from the station right the way through to the promenade, and the county council will be taking the lead on that in partnership with us. There are significant improvements proposed for the pedestrian areas in particular, but also to green up the spaces to provide a little bit more parking provision. We weren't allowed to provide for, we weren't allowed to apply for car parks per se. However, we have managed to focus on that as well as a number of other features to improve within the public realm. That just shows where the public realm improvements run from. As I say, from the station right the way through to the coast. And we would work alongside the HAS scheme in terms of the improvements to the signage and those kind of things in terms of the overall public realm improvements. So again, an artist's impression of what Senhouse Street could look like. We also want to focus on improving the local cycling routes within the town. And finally, that's just an image of a boardwalk, which is situated, we propose to be situated at the North Quay, that would take pedestrians from the North Quay across the little beach, which belongs to Allerdale, across to the promenade area, which would mean that pedestrians wouldn't need to go through the housing estate to get to that attractive promenade area. So if we get funding for public realm, that would also be part of it. And the last couple of slides just show we've got a program in place. This is very much a whistle-stop tour. I've rushed through those slides just to give you an idea of the plans. And that's Buttress, who were our architects that undertook the planning work for us. So I'll just stop sharing that. I think that's stopped. Yeah, okay, that's off the screen. Great, thank you. I was going to mention a few things as well about governance, and then it's really over to councillors to ask any questions they wish, either pitching to Helen, Steve or myself. So just a few points that I was going to mention. Firstly, that we are looking to develop the governance arrangements further that we've currently got in place. Particularly if we get a lot more funding, we will need to focus on how we manage the fund, and to make sure that the public funding is really the focus of what we want to achieve, and that it's spent wisely and efficiently. So we will start to move from a conceptual phase with both schemes into a delivery phase. So what that means is that really we need to start thinking about the detailed plans. So there is a need to review the governance structure that we've currently got. The Maryport Town Centre Steering Group has been very successful, and partly as a result of that, we've managed to secure £150,000 worth of external funding for the planning, but also over half the funding towards the 1.2 million for the HAS scheme, so that there is a need to make sure that we look at the delivery of the buildings side of things, how we improve the physical structures, but also the community regeneration side of things, some of which Helen went through with you. So we will need to redefine the roles there. We'll be redefining the advisory group. That will be the most strategic group that will involve various different members and other stakeholders in terms of developing the governance going forwards. We'll certainly be utilising the skills of more or less everybody that's currently involved, but we will keep you informed of how that develops over time. So that is very much work in progress in terms of the governance. But I think now it's just really over to you. If you've got any questions, be more than happy to answer any that you have.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Paul. Is there any councillors with questions, please? If you'd like to raise your hand. Councillor, is that Carney? Yeah. We've got a raised hand from Councillor Daniels.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, it all sounds very, very, very good. I mean, I think Maryport is worthy of some improvement. It's a lovely old town. I just wonder, you talk a lot about encouraging art groups and restaurants and food outlets to come to the area. You want to attract tourists, you need, I mean, one of the things that I think is lacking would be a very good seafood restaurant, seeing as we're down by the ocean. How do you plan on actually actively encouraging entrepreneurs to take up leases, etc., in those buildings? Are you going to be proactive? Are you going to give them better business rates? Maybe sign some kind of a lease break or something like that? That's my first question. And I was I'm not quite understanding what Helen was talking about, the Crosby building. You talk about bedrooms on the second floor. Is that something like that's going to be an entrepreneur running that, or is it the council running that? And is it like an apartment hotel? Is that what you're envisaging there?
Want me to answer that, guys?
I'll let Steve answer that.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm in the food and restaurant business all my life and hotel business, so that's kind of where my focus is.
Okay, well, in terms of the new premises we're creating, obviously for the idea is to create a cumulative effect in terms of reasons to come to Maryport and things to do. At the moment, we have things like the aquarium, the Maritime Museum, although it's quite a reduced offer at the moment. So if we improve that offer, we improve a maker, if you like, art galleries to add into the aquarium and all the natural attributes we have, we hopefully will increase footfall. We're not just doing it for tourists, we're also doing it for the people who actually live in the town. So the focus of the high street is to create a better retail offer there, a better food and beverage offer that has a wider range of trading experiences for people and an experience when they come into the town centre. So the startup units will be very much easy in, easy out terms, so short-term leases, relatively low rents, and in some cases there'll be turnover rents, so very cheap to get in. And then as the business does well, both parties benefit, both the council in terms of its rental receipt, but also the business because it's surviving and making a profit. So don't kill the goose before it's laid the golden egg. And in terms of 68 Crosby Street, it has planning consent for a B&B type of accommodation at the moment. And I think the gentleman concerned that has that planning consent originally was looking to come out through 66 Crosby Street. He doesn't own that, but he owns 68. So as part of the bringing shop fronts back to life and creating use of uppers, the idea is that we work with him to regenerate 68 as his sort of cafe bar reception, and then he owns a courtyard at the back of it, into which we can put a staircase and a lift to go up into the upper floors. So it's more going to be like a hostel, sort of upmarket hostel type accommodation, but not doing bespoke bed and breakfast and a hotel type stuff. So it'll be continental breakfast rather than cooked and that sort of stuff, because he hasn't got the space to do kitchens and that sort of stuff. But he's a local businessman already who has an interest in the town. He knows the food and beverage market in the town, and he has recognised that there is a need for a wider offer of accommodation in the town. So we're supporting his business.
Yes. Thanks very much. A supplementary question. For the covered market, are you kind of looking at something a bit like the covered market in Newcastle, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with? It's got quite a mix of, restaurants, butchers, fish shops, stuff like that. Is that what you're aiming at? I mean, it's very popular.
There's two schools of thought on that. There's the view that the town would like to see a traditional market back in, which it doesn't have at the moment. And they're also working with the events teams. Obviously, we run Taste Cumbria, etc. So the idea is to have a combination of a traditional, either 1 day a week market that we build up and reestablish it, but also a series of themed markets as destination events to ensure that we make maximum. So it's a covered area that we can use for a market, for events, or just for someone as a place to gather where you're undercover when it rains.
Okay, thanks. That's it for me.
Yeah. Councillor Cannon, could you please put the raised hand function on, please? I just can't see it.
I can't find it.
All right. Go. I know you wanted to actually answer your question first, so I'm going to come to you first, Cannon.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, right. It's in relation to the proposed grant scheme regarding the residential units in St House Street. I do feel there is a need for balance. I don't want to turn the town into a dormitory style place where people reside only, do their shopping, their leisure and their employment elsewhere. It may sound aesthetically pleasing, and that could be the intention, but I've got to say, and I've said this a number of times, the reality of a community historically happy and settled has not to be lost when we engage in this. We need all that is required to keep vibrancy, and the name of it is the future high street. So we've got to keep the ethos of a high street at the forefront of this. But I don't want to have people complaining to me that they're going to have to do everything outside of town and there's only a dormitory style place to live.
Can I just make a comment on that, Ian?
Yeah, if you want to come back on that, Steve, yeah.
Yeah, the idea is not to create a dormitory town, but a very big part of the retail scene at the moment is the fact that retail is dying in its traditional form, and therefore you need to create more of a destination feel and also create demand for it. So whilst we're saying it's a shop conversion scheme, it doesn't have to be for residential. The idea it's an old-fashioned repairs grant type of scheme to bring it back into a proposal which the property owner comes to us and asks for a grant to refurbish it. Residential is great because it creates footfall and creates demand for businesses within the town, but it may be that it's more appropriate to be offices if that's what the individual wants to do. So it's more of a refurbishment scheme as pure residential, but the general consensus of thinking nationally at the moment is that town centres are no longer the place people go to the principal shopping. They go to the out of town supermarkets. We have those around Maryport. So we need to generate a reason for them to come back into the town centres, whether that's because they live there or it's a food and beverage and entertainment offer or what you call festival shopping offer, which is still very much hands-on.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Councillor Malcolm Granger. You're on mute, Malcolm. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, you say you may not get all the funding. If you get it all, well and good, but if you just get part funding, which of the items will be first to be dropped off? And when will we know when the funding is available?
Yeah. Okay, so we're due to hear in November. Well, we've been told mid to late autumn, so I'm taking that as possibly around November time. There's no guarantee we'll get any funding, of course, but we are hopeful in that we know that the government are keen to support regeneration within town centres. However, there is a lot of competition. So we know that that over 101 schemes were shortlisted, and we were in the second tranche. We know there is competition, and ultimately, I did the maths and I worked out, there's about £6 million each to go around, but it doesn't work like that. It may be that some local authorities won't get any, and others will get the full amount, or there could be shades of grey between, of course. However, what we tried to do is pitch the application very much towards what the government are looking for, because we genuinely think that Maryport needs this injection of cash to improve things, but not just to throw good money after bad. We'll be very sensitive to what the needs of the community are. We're listening to all of the stakeholders, and we've had a very effective consultation process. The key scheme which we believe perhaps is more at risk is actually the Market Square, because it's probably one that we had to put in a plan A and a plan B. We were asked to do that. And we believe that we've got a strong plan A and plan B for that, because we can still create within that space quite a successful market area without necessarily spending a huge amount of money on the physical improvements of that area. We all know how successful Keswick Market is, and that's not a physical sort of brick built design. It's much more tented or canopied sort of arrangement. So we think, we are hopeful that if we get a reduced sum, that will be the area maybe that we could reduce. However, for the other schemes as well, we are at design stage. We've got conceptual designs which can be still amended following on from further consultation, further work with architects to change things to accommodate what we think is going to work most effectively.
Can I have a follow on again, please?
Yeah, if you could, if you like them, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the funding which has been given to the Wave over the years is quite substantial. I, for one, would like to see a productive end to monies being spent on this project. That's a statement.
I was going to say that is a statement. That's not for me to decide. Yeah, fair enough, Malcolm. Yeah, it's noted. Councillor Joe Holliday, you've got a question?
Not so much a question as a comment. About 20 years ago, what they're proposing doing in Senhouse Street was near enough exactly like it is now, and nothing got done because the property owners just didn't want to know.
Yeah.
So, you can't see any different actually. The idea was the first floor properties to be brought into use and the shops front tidied up. Smallest in the street, and it just didn't go off. Another little point about the Empire Yard, which is Mill Yard, I think, probably Morris' name, but
I've lost you there.
Big culvert comes right down the middle of there. I think it comes. If you know, hello.
Yeah, you're breaking up there, Joe. I didn't catch that. Sorry.
I send me connections which are stable. It just the Empire what you're proposing. There's a big culvert comes right down the middle of that, which causes certain problems for any development in there. I think that's why it's never been developed in the past.
Right. Okay. Sure, Paul will note that. Councillor Semple, the question.
Oh yeah, thanks, Chair. First of all, Chair and everybody else, I really like, this is the first time I've heard this in detail, and I think broadly, it's absolutely spot on. I wanted to ask about you say you've done consultation. I was in the paper today, there's UK 15-year-olds are the lowest, I think, in the world, perhaps, at 64% in terms of life, what they've got to look forward to. I liked what you said about how it's aimed really at residents as much as tourists, yeah? So in your consultation, are you talking to younger people who, this is very much about the future, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We have talked to schools, local schools council. We've got a number of contacts working in the schools. I think Helen, you might want to say something about the HAS on that specifically in terms of schools.
Young people certainly are one of the identified groups as not normally getting involved in community activities and in regeneration proposals and in activities within the town centre generally. So yes, they are. We have focused very much. In fact, for the HAS scheme, the first questionnaire survey that we put out on social media to schools, and have had a quite positive response, particularly about the street art idea that I mentioned. So they, whilst a lot of school kids wouldn't go into art galleries, they quite like the idea of street art, for example. So yes, we are aware of that, and we'll be trying harder to get more involved and with them and other groups that aren't normally represented, like disabled people and people who can't, it's just not as easy for them as well.
Yeah, if I could just comment. When Helen first started out, she referred back to the Maryport delivery plan and a series of outlined interventions that we felt were the key work areas for the whole of Maryport. These ones around the high street just happened to be the first ones which have come up with funding available, and therefore they've been moved forward more quickly than the other ones. But there's also a lot of work taking place around the promenade, and a lot of that involves activities for younger generations. So, adventure sports down there, looking at cafes and looking at meeting places and looking at the beach and the e-bike hub and climbing zones and all sorts of stuff. So it's an ongoing rolling program to deliver that Maryport delivery plan. This just happens to be the first step, if you like, in the wider picture.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Councillor Scott, you have a question?
Thanks very much, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for the presentation. It's been really useful. I did recognise quite a bit of it. I suppose we're all hopeful of the funding coming off, but have aspirations, and the plan looks really good, and hopefully it'll work. I think the wave, certainly leisure centre, when it comes to the cost that's been ploughed in over the years, the pool's got to be the winner there. That's certainly speaking with a lot of the local residents. The big push was for the pool, etc. And I love the e-bike ethos as well. I spoke to Graham a while ago about it. Is there any future plans, if you like, to open up certainly the e-bike to Allenby, Silloth, that kind of area, and look at marketing more sort of in the Western Lakes and the Solway Firth, etc. Really, so that was the first one. The other one, of course, is we've got to throw the negative in there, and that is, has anybody thought of coronavirus and the potential that may happen moving forward with that? Obviously, with design, is there the option of putting clean air features in, certainly less pinch points, these kind of setups. And the other one was, when it comes to the website, I've got to say I visited a lovely place in America, and where they had Facebook, it was more driven to, so imagine a Facebook driven to Maryport, where bus routes were there, and it would tell you how long it was till bus etc. came on board. It gave you all your local offers for your local shops. It told you all your local, and a lot of it was driven through private advertising, which ensured it was sustainable going forward, and it moved that way. So perhaps something with regards to that for communication, really. And that was it. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Would you like to come back on that, Paul? Really?
Yeah, I'll answer the question about the e-bike and the corona, but I think in terms of the Facebook and that side of things, I don't know whether Steve or Helen might be better placed to answer that. I'm just aware that we have looked at ways in which we can improve the communication on events and things like that. I know Helen's working on that, so we'll come back to that. So, but in terms of the e-bike hub, I agree. I mean, I think it's a good idea. We are already working with our counterparts in Copeland actually on the idea of an e-bike hub, because we both they've put in for funding through the same route, and although we're not talking about our individual schemes, we know that we both asked for funding for an e-bike hub, and we actually think it'd be a really good idea to have a kind of sharing of information on on that if it becomes successful for both of us, because we believe that coastal route right the way up, right the way up from Allenby and upwards, right the way down, could be something that would be very popular with tourists and with local people. And the thing about e-bikes is that they're a great adventure for people who maybe are not not the fittest, or maybe a little bit older. I think they're a great idea. My wife has gone, she absolutely loves it. So in terms of the coronavirus, quite recently, we did have, just before we submitted the application to the Future High Street team, we did actually have a supplementary request for information about coronavirus, and had we considered coronavirus as part of our plan. And there are limitations in terms of how much you can consider coronavirus, because none of us truly knows where we're going to be in 12 months or in 18 months. So whilst we did consider it, we couldn't really, be absolutely accurate about the predictions. But we have, what I would say is, first and foremost, it's a 4-year program. So, hopefully when a lot of these schemes are being developed in maybe 2 years' time, we will be in a better position and more fully informed. So we're not at detailed design stage. So we can factor in all of these things for the likes of the swimming pool, and certainly the open air would be considered as part of the market initiative. We would consider screens and that kind of thing as part of the Carlton redevelopment. So yes, all of those issues would be considered.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Councillor Eastleigh, Mike, would you like to come in with a question?
Two, if I may. The first one's relatively simple. I don't see any mention of Maryport Town Council anywhere in the document. I hope they're involved, and I hope they're fully supportive, because it may be that Maryport Town Council are here when Aldale Borough Council is just a memory.
Yeah.
So it might be useful to make sure we've got Maryport Town Council fully on board. My second point, as the former executive member who wrestled with the problem of the wave being a drain on the council's resources for 8 years, and achieved some success, because it wasn't as big a drain on the resources when I finished as it had been when I started. But I also remember that the business case for the wave, long before my time as a councillor, but I remember it, did well in the competition for the most fictitious business case ever put forward. Had some rivals. I can think of another one in Whitehaven, so which should have won an award for fiction. But remember, the wave was first conceived of as a museum. It was going to house the Maritime Museum. And the number of people who are going to attend it every year were absolutely phenomenal. I don't think it ever got that many people in its entire existence as it was predicted to get every year. So forgive me if I've appeared a bit cynical. However, I do like your plan. I think it's bloody great. But I caution myself that it's the triumph of hope over experience. I've seen business plans before and business cases that looked absolutely great. And then the council had the job for years afterwards of pouring money in to make up for the deficiency in the forecasts presented by the business case. I hope that's not the case this time. I'm sure you guys will get it right. But my point is, when can I see the business case, please?
Okay, Mike.
Shall I
Paul,
come
would
back
you
on
like to
that,
come
Chair?
back with that?
Yeah, okay. I mean, Steve might want to answer a little bit more detail on the business case issue, but I would say first and foremost, yes, we've consulted with the town council. They're actually involved in our steering group at the moment, being very vocal and helpful. That's right, isn't it, Carney, if she's still with us? And yeah, so partly, you know, with their
You've got Kendall. It's Kendall that represents them.
I beg your pardon?
It's Peter Kendall who represents them.
Yes, yes. And Peter has attended each one of the meetings without fail. So, you know, to be fair, that's happened. We've done presentations to the town council as well. Just on in terms of the wave and the business case, there is a business case, and the you know, there are documents available that we can share with you with regard to how this stacks up. Decisions made about the wave. We were moving initially. We were going to have a splash pool in there, and then the overwhelming response from consultation was that people believed a swimming pool would work. Now, we would have loved a bigger swimming pool than what we're proposing. However, we have to make it stack up financially. So we have, you know, we've worked on the basis of the kinds of numbers. Steve, I don't know whether there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, by way of background behind what Paul's just said, we originally started to join forces like with the local community pool trust, and they'd engaged KKP to look at the economic case for a new pool in Maryport, and the upshot of that piece of work was in accordance with Sport England's criteria that there wasn't a case for a new pool. We looked at a leisure attraction to try and bring tourism into Maryport, and thought we'd have a splash play area, as Paul said, in the wave. The problem with a splash play is you need a phenomenal amount of volume of footfall to make it viable, and it's very limited in terms of what you can use it for. So we work with KKP further and GLL, the current operators of the ABC sports facility and leisure facilities, and the view was that the most viable option was to look at a 4 by 25 meter pool up there that we can use for multi uses. So we can do instructions, it can be used by local schools, swimming clubs. We can use inflatables to make it a play area, and that way you maximize the number of users and therefore the revenue you can generate from it. By removing the entertainment side of the current accommodation inside the wave, we were then able to put a more fit for purpose health and fitness suite inside it, and a better cafe. So as a leisure centre, it's a much more viable proposition than the sort of halfway house it is now, which tries to be all things to all men and doesn't really achieve those aims. But as Paul said, there is a business case that's there with some figures which are independently verified by both GLL and by KKP.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Malcolm, would you like to come in again?
Can I just ask? I did ask a question.
Sorry, Mike.
When can we see the business case?
We can share that with you now, Michael.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For the whole project, not just the wave. I mean,
yeah,
the wave was originally conceived as a museum.
Yeah,
we need to see the business case of the whole project. I hope it stacks up, because it looks great, but I'm nervous.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Malcolm, would you like to come in again?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just that the wave, you're going to put a pool in the wave. You've already got one pool in Maryport.
No, there isn't, Malcolm.
Is there not going now?
No.
I thought there was one at Netherall, sorry.
No, that was closed last year.
That's grand, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from any other members? Well, I've got a call. That's okay. I think one of them was around the pool. I think I'm a bit nervous about it in terms of I feel it's been driven by the pool group, who were more of a swimming club and a 4-lane pool, and that did struggle to survive at Netherall School. And I think when the initial idea was mooted to actually put a pool down in the wave, it was a leisure type pool to attract families as well as tourists. And I think that was the driver for it. And it seems to have been steered away to a 4-lane pool, which is just going to be used by a swimming club and schools. And it did struggle to survive in that capacity. And like Michael, I'm a bit nervous if we're going to try and actually make that sustainable going forward without family groups and pulling families into that. And I think the overriding consensus as I've talked to people is they would like to see a family style pool, so all of the actual residents can use it, and it's not just for a particular swimming club. Make it more diverse, more attractive to wider groups. I think that was my first point. The second point was with regards to Carlton, and I think I've touched on this with you before. Again, that theatre space. I think you've quoted about a 100 seating capacity. And I noticed when I talked down to the guys in the wave, basically they were struggling to actually bring in reasonable acts or reasonable entertainment that they could actually pay for with such limited seating. And I think they've got seating of about 200, and they couldn't actually make that financially viable with regards to entertainment. And they needed somewhere that they could actually take in possibly up to 400 people, whether it's standing or otherwise. They needed that capability to actually make any entertainment that they brought into the wave actually financially viable. So that's another point in terms of like, it's that theatre space that you were proposing for the Carlton, and I think I've touched on it with you with regards to possibly making it a dual purpose space on one of those levels, with regards to combined play area by day, entertainment space by night, making it large enough to actually make it financially more viable. And I think the concern is that the business case has to stack up after the actual process has been put in place and all the modifications have been done and all the new activity centres are put in place. I just want to make sure that we have a sustainable business case going forward for it. Really, I think that's my major concern.
I think my response to that, Councillor, would be that we've gone out and taken independent expert advice on what's the most viable way of and sustainable way of providing a water-based activity centre in Maryport, and the advice is that if it was a splash pay type of area, we wouldn't create the footfall and the revenues to basically support its operation.
It wasn't. I didn't say a splash area. I said a leisure type pool.
Yeah, I mean, and so the idea of this is it's the vehicle for a family leisure type place. Although it's a tank pool as such, we can introduce play space using inflatables and slides and that sort of stuff to give it that family angle. It's not just there for swimmers to plough up and down the lanes, training to swim. It has a more wider use, because the equipment will be bought to broaden its appeal rather than it just being a pool, which there wasn't that equipment, inflatables and stuff at the Nether Hall pool, which is probably why it failed, because it didn't have that broader appeal.
I think where I was coming from was making it more family orientated, so we get more support through the day from family groups, mother and toddler groups and that type of thing, so they can use it comfortably with 2 and 3 year olds, getting them used to the water and that type of stuff, making it appeal to them. In its present proposed format, it just doesn't do that.
I think we can look at the detailed design, whether we use the same sort of thing we've got down at Workington, where you've got a floating floor in the bottom of it so you can reduce the depth of it, right, ad hoc. But also you're going to have a much improved soft play centre, clip and climb centre, proper changing facilities and a proper cafe. So it's a better overall family offer than just a cold 4x25 pool and change room full stop. So as I say, we've gone externally for advice on that, and that's what they've reported back to us. We're not at the detailed design stage yet, so I think we can pick up your concerns there in the detailed design to see if we can make it more flexible through design.
As Mike says, it'll be interesting to see the business case that's been put forward.
Councillor Green.
Question from sorry, Paul.
Can I respond to the issue on the Carlton?
Yeah.
Just to that point that you made earlier. I do agree, and I do absolutely understand the point that you're making with regard to space. And apart from the wave there are a few buildings within the Maryport area that would actually have capacity to take in large numbers for events. Something that was mentioned by, I was in a meeting yesterday, a lady made a suggestion which I thought was quite a good one, and that is that, particularly at the moment as we think about coronavirus, the idea of having sort of semi-covered spaces that are suitable for bands and that kind of thing seems to be really quite popular at the moment. Okay, they're not as useful in the winter time, but certainly right throughout the summertime. And maybe this is something we can factor in as we start to think about the interventions in the promenade area and whether or not there is space or capacity to create something of that nature. There's no reason why we can't have entertainments in the Market Square area if we get funding for that. However, we've got to be mindful of noise at being in a fairly residential area. But I accept your point about that, and I think maybe that's something we need to think about for future developments as well, in terms of what could be available for bigger events, particularly sort of bands and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Councillor Heaslip, Mike, got another question?
Just a quick point. It's noticeable, I've noticed over the years, that you can always get capital for projects. Capital is never a problem. What's really a problem is paying the bills year by year for the next 25 or 30 years thereafter.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm less worried about the capital aspects of this project. I'm sure you get the money from somewhere. You always can if it's a good enough project. What really worries me is paying the bills year by year and what provision the council might need to put in its accounts for making up deficits on any of these projects. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I think the business case needs to be looked at very carefully to make sure that if it does require continuing subvention by the council, that the money's there for it and the budget is there to allow that to happen. Good luck.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Councillor Semple, question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Question, I mean, I was listening to what Councillor Heaslip was saying. I mean, we've all been around the block in terms of business pieces and stuff. What I liked about what I'm hearing is a vision. I think if you set up a vision and you get people to buy into that, which is what you're doing, isn't it? So it's a different thing. But the question really is, maybe with my Allerdale hat on, is there not on a knock-on with the pool? Is there not a knock-on effect with the pool at Workington? So are we considering that?
I can come back on that. Yes, we have considered that, and we spoke to GLL at length about that, and their view is that there is currently more demand for the Workington facility than there is supply, and therefore pulling some of the schools that are currently using the Workington pool back into Maryport would actually free up time in the Workington facility for Workington communities to actually use. So, and they've looked at the business plan figures are their figures in terms of footfall numbers and revenue figures. So we've very much been informed by the people that currently operate our facilities and what they think the impact will be.
Okay. Any more questions for Paul, Steve and Helen? No, that's great. No, thanks for coming along today. That's been really useful. I think everybody's been more than enlightened. So thank you for your time. It's been really good. And I think at that point, Lee, it's a good time to call an adjournment, and it'll let Paul, Helen and Steve get away.
Yeah, no problem, Chair. 5 minutes, 3 o'clock?
Yeah, 5 minutes, 3 o'clock will be fine, yeah.
Okay, members, can you just remember to be back on time? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
get it in, your microphone's still on.
Members, can we, those who haven't already, can we switch our cameras on and we'll look to resume? Thank you. Chair, we're all back on the meeting.
Everyone back, Lee? Confirm that, please, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, we'll resume the meeting if that's okay. That closes out item 6, the Maryport programmes update. It was I think you gave a good insight to how it's progressing in Maryport. Item 7, we've had a late item added to the agenda, and it's been decided to actually put that into item 7. There has been some previous consultation with co-chairs and the officer, and it was agreed that item 7 would be the appropriate place, given that we have an additional presentation from one of the officers. As a result, all other items on the agenda will sequentially fall down the order, i.e. item 7 becoming item 8, item 8 becoming item 9, and so on. So with that, the added item for the agenda, item 7, is satisfying the legal test for a public spaces protection order relating to dog fouling. I'm not sure if the actual item has actually been sent out, Lee. Has all the members been sent a copy of the item? Lee?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, Chair, all the members were sent this item via email.
Yeah, and we're going to save a short presentation and introduction from Christopher Fleming, if that's okay, Christopher?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
There you go, great. Well, thank you very much for addressing this item at such short notice as well. And what I'll do is I'll try and give a general overview and go into a bit more detail when it comes to the legal test. But if you have any questions as you go along, just feel free to stop me, or if you want to wait till the end. Either way, I'm happy. So really just as an overview as to what a public space protection order is. Originally under the Clean Neighbourhoods and Environment Act, councils could make orders for dog control, alcohol in public spaces and things like that, by way of an order which would prevent such behaviours. It would allow them to issue fixed penalty notices and prevent that behaviour when it comes to alcohol, so you could actually remove alcohol vessels from people in public spaces. That act was then repealed by the Antisocial Behaviour and Crime Policing Act in 2014, which introduced PSPOs as a concept, which very much like the old orders works on the same basis, that it allows you to address antisocial behaviour that doesn't constitute a criminal offence. So this is, and naturally dog fouling is one of those that isn't governed anywhere else. So we require a PSPO to be in place for the regulation of dog fouling in the borough. Under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime Policing Act, there was a saving provision, so any existing dog control orders were in fact transitioned to a PSPO, and that occurred on the 20th of October 2017, and each PSPO has a lifespan of 3 years, so that is due to expire on the 20th of October 2020. And that is one of the reasons that this item was pushed in as a bit of a late item. and the other being that officers that would normally deal with this are our frontline officers that deal with community services side of things and environmental offences, and they've been very much tied up with the coronavirus recovery efforts. So there has been a larger demand on them. So that's why you've got me today, and it's been a bit of a late item. So, like I said, as far as dog fouling goes, it is regulated currently by a PSPO, and that was a transitioned order. A copy of the existing order can be found at the agenda at Annex A, and that's dated, just double check the date on that. Yeah, and that's dated March 2007. So what we've done is, in order to satisfy the legal test in the Antisocial Behaviour Crime Policing Act, we've done a consultation exercise, and we've also gathered the evidence held by the council in relation to dog fouling, the results of which can be found in the report. So what I'll do, I'll run through those at the moment. So you'll see that compiled and attached to the agenda, there's a summary of the reports made to the council between the 2nd of August 2016 and the 24th of June 2020. And councillors have also been sent as a separate item. Unfortunately, we can't disclose this to the public, but a full list of each individual instance, that categorises by area and description in some cases. Yeah, so between those periods of the 2nd of August 2016 and 24th of June, we had 3,484 reports, and that comes out with a daily rate of 2.45 reports. And we also see as a general acceptance by officers anecdotally and by our grounds maintenance contractor that this is not a full picture as far as the dog fouling in the area. There's a number of instances that don't go reported, or there's instances where our contractor cleans up the waste while attending to another job. That we're not going to go out twice for 2 instances that are a metre apart, even though it hasn't been reported. So the true extent of the issue is actually unknown, but this we feel is the best possible figure that we can provide. And this is all the data that's available through the My Allerdale app. We appreciate prior to the 2nd of August 2016, there would have been other reports, but it was sporadic how these were reported, whether it was in by phone, whether it was directly to our contractor, or whether it was by email to officers and things like that. So that was the truest figure we could get. So we started from the date of the 2nd of August. As for the consultation, we put out 4 questions and asked people for the general comments. And we had 429 responses there. The results of which are laid out again at paragraph 2 of your report today. And the questions have all been written in a manner in which they will relate to the legal test, and I'll go through that in a bit more detail. But just to go through those as a general overview, people feeling that it's had a detrimental effect, and that was around about 90% of the respondents agreed that they felt it had a detrimental effect to their community and people around them. 91% felt that it has a direct impact on their day-to-day life, and we've got 81% of people feeling there shouldn't be any exemptions to dog fouling. It shouldn't be tolerated in any instances. And then one of the questions put to people is whether they've seen a recent increase or decrease to dog fouling in the community, and 93% said it was getting worse. Also, if you note at the bottom of paragraph 2.2 there, I've just popped a little note on there to say that some of the figures don't quite tally up to the grand total. That's because not everybody answered all of the questions. So there is just some slight discrepancies between the figures, and that's generally what that's down to. Also, within that consultation, people had the opportunity to bring up other issues, and I would just like to go across, just go through some of the more prominent ones, those as to why we're not going to consider them as part of the legal test. So the first one at paragraph 2.3 there is that people have noticed a large increase of poo bags being discarded, so people picking up the waste, but then leaving it in the bag, hanging on a tree, dropping it in the grass verge, or just leaving it on the path. And that seems to be a very prominent issue. That does constitute littering under Section 87 of the Environmental Protection Act and therefore can't be in the scope for PSPO because it's an existing offence. Consultees also raised a number of footpaths and parks and things like that, a lack of bins. Again, that's not something we can really address with the PSPO, but something that we have taken on board and has been reported back to the community services team and will be considered in those areas where dog fouling is more prominent and littering of dog waste in bags as well. There's also a perceived lack of enforcement as well from behalf of the public. As to why there's this perception, I'm not quite sure. We do a lot of work communications wise as to when people get caught fouling, regular updates. The team go out and they put up new signs, the spray signs on floors in those bad areas, and they do try and be out there as much as possible, but there's 4 full-time officers covering the borough. None of them are office based, they're all based in a van and they're always out on patrols and things like that. So that's maybe something we need to address with our communications team, or there's maybe even scope there for potentially further support for that team in the future, but again, not something within the scope of the PSPO. The other thing which will be in the scope of the PSPO but is limited is the level of fine available. A lot of people wanting a higher fine than that's already put out there. Unfortunately, the legislation at Section 68.6 of the Anti-Social Crime and Policing Act limits that to a maximum of £100. And for reasons that I'll outline later on, we will be asking the executive to consider the highest available fine if you agree today that the legal test has been met. This will be put to the executive and we'll be asking for the highest possible fine available, and this is based upon the costs the council of cleaning up the waste, time for officers being out on patrols and going to these sort of hotspots, and really the greater detrimental effect on the community. There needs to be some form of punishment for this behaviour. The final point as well that was raised was the regulation of other dog related activity, and I know Councillor Heasley has raised this with my colleagues as well, and it will be something that will be coming to yourselves in due course, is the exclusion from dogs in certain areas and then requiring dogs to be on lead in other areas. A lot of this around sports pitches, parks, children's play areas. And again, this is something that can be dealt with by a PSPO, but will be done by a separate consultation. We need more bespoke evidence for those orders. So we need to look at a park in isolation, and we need to understand the use of the park and the amount of instances there are of dogs, with children being approached by dogs in parks and things like that. And it's just a very separate exercise which will require its own consultation, but that will be something that will be coming to you very soon, as my colleagues have started that process. Yeah, so then if we just move on to the legal test there, so that's the evidence that we hold at present. And as officers, we believe that is enough to satisfy the legal test, which is outlined at Section 59 of the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act. And if at the report at paragraph 5, in the Act itself, it's broken into 2 conditions, but what I've then done is just further subcategorised those into 5 points. And really what we need to do is tick all 5 of those boxes in order to be satisfied that a PSPO is the appropriate way forward, and we can then go to look at making the order. So the first condition, like I said, this is split into 2 parts. So the activities carried on in a public place within the local authority's area have a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality. We are satisfied that that has been reached. The questions have been designed in a way in which they directly ask that of the public. Of the 394, of the total consultation responses, we had 394 people saying that it had that detrimental effect. The second question there as well, if you have it has a direct impact on day-to-day life, again 91% of the consultation responses agreed that it did have a detrimental effect. an impact on their day-to-day life. And I think it's also important to recognise that we're receiving 2.45 daily reports of dog fouling, and this is a clear sign that this is having impact on people's life. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this wealth of reports coming in. Again, I would like to, I haven't included it in the summary itself, but I think members should be minded that not all instances are reported. We haven't included this as part of the satisfying the legal test, as it is difficult to quantify, but you would look, if you look on our social media posts, any time in which something goes out about dog fouling in an area, somebody being caught not picking up after the dog, there's a barrage of comments. There's other anecdotal information of the amount of fouling that goes unreported. And again, we think that's enough to satisfy that first condition. As for the second part of that first condition, it's likely that the activities will be carried on in a public place within that area, and they will have such an effect. Again, it's directly in a public place. It's not happening elsewhere. People aren't reporting that it's in their back garden caused by their dog. These all relate to it being in a public area. And again, we just go back to those consultation responses, that it's having a direct detrimental effect on the community. Again, if this wasn't in an open space, then it wouldn't be having such an effect. The second condition, so I've split this into 3 points. It is or is likely to be persistent or continue in nature. Again, the amount of reports that we've had shows that it is a persistent and continuing in nature. And the consultation response there, where we ask if they've seen a recent increase or decrease, 93% of people saying that it's getting worse in their area. And again, that's enough to satisfy the condition. The second part of the second condition is a bit of an unusual one. Because of the nature of the PSPO legislation, it's to cover a large amount of non-criminal behaviour. So it asks the question of whether the activity is unreasonable. I, for one, struggle to think of an instance in which the scale of dog fouling in an area that we've seen in these reports would ever be considered reasonable, and in what circumstances. However, what we then look at is the exemptions actually available to such an order. So if we were to understand if the behaviour was, in what instances it would be reasonable. So we list a number of exemptions on the draft order, which members can find attached to the agenda. And again, I'll go through these in a bit more detail later on, but these are generally to ensure that we satisfy our requirements under the Equality Act as a public authority. And it largely focuses around those with disabilities, which means they aren't able to pick up the waste. And again, under the heading of whether it's reasonable or unreasonable behaviour, it's noted that it's a public health risk due to the toxins in it. And again, we believe that's enough to satisfy that criteria. And the final part of the test is that the behaviour justifies the restrictions imposed. Yeah. Again, we've built up this evidence base that shows that it's detrimental, it's ongoing and persistent. And what other ways there are to actually stop this behaviour? There's people out on patrol, there's signs of, they've sprayed it onto the paths. We publicise when people are caught and fined. Try everything we can to educate people about the detriment that it has on the community, and that still isn't working. And again, and it goes down to the justification being that it doesn't actually impose on any rights or freedoms of dog walkers, promotes responsible behaviour, and it's really just to ensure that the public are not brought into contact with feces on the streets and in public places, and generally keep the community clean as a whole. Again, the justification point of that part of the test is supported by the consultation responses, in that 81% of the public don't think there should be any exemptions to such an order. And again, we believe that's enough, while balancing our equality duty to satisfy that criteria. So, as well as asking whether members agree that, well, whether they agree that we've got enough evidence to satisfy that legal test, we'd also like your comments on the duration of the order. So, as I mentioned earlier on, an order has a maximum lifespan of 3 years or less, if you want to go a little bit less. During that time, that will be constantly reviewed, and we'll be constantly gathering that data and information to, at the end of that 3-year period, to either support the order, but a new order or renewal of the current order, or in fact, maybe take a step back and say we no longer need order, we've seen a significant enough decrease. Like I say, we invite your comments about the duration if you feel a shorter term would be the way forward, and maybe some caveats to that as to whether you feel there should be different ways in which to monitor the behaviour. The second point we would like your comments on and recommendations on is the level of fine. As explained earlier, this is limited to £100, but we would like to push for the highest possible fine given the detrimental effect on the community the behaviour has and the cost to the public that this has. And finally, your comments on any exemptions as well. And again, these are outlined at the back of the agenda in the draft order. I can go through these for you if you'd like. Like I said, they are very much in line with our equality duty. They're very much focused around disability and those people are unable to clean up after the dogs. Like I said, if you'd like me to go through them, I'm more than happy to do so, but that's up to yourself.
For me, there isn't any need, Christopher. I think we can all take that in, I think.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that, Christopher. I presume we'll take any questions now, if that's okay. If anybody has any questions, I can see Malcolm has his hand up. Malcolm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Chris, you've got an uphill struggle, lad, because some of these people that own dogs are nearly pigs in themselves. It's one of the worst things you can ever come across is dog fouling on the street. And whatever the fine is, you want to double it, because it isn't good enough for £100 because they just laugh at you or they cause a carry on the streets. Whatever you want to do, however far you want to go, you've got my backing to do what you want, lad.
Thank you, Malcolm. Councillor Joe Holliday. Joe, would you like to come in with a question?
Yeah, it's just a remark, really. It's about, which Chris mentioned, about a disabled person not being able to pick it up. Why can't have any sympathy, they shouldn't have a dog, but have short term. No, I could not go down to bend down to pick it up. So it was a short term thing. If I had a dog just for a short term, I think you've got to be careful with that. But just, I know I could not at this time bend down to pick it up.
Right. Thanks, Joe. Councillor Daniels, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I totally agree with Malcolm. Highest fine you can possibly come up with, I totally support. It's particularly irritating when you go around the lake and you Durham water here and you find dog poo tied to trees every 100 yards or so. It's just unbelievable. One of the comments I'd like to make was that during COVID, when, as you know, Keswick's very busy with tourists, one would have thought the amount of dog poo would have lessened. Unfortunately, it remained the same, which much to the astonishment of local people who thought they were absolutely marvellous about looking after their dogs, only to find out they were just as bad as everybody else. So it's a bit sad, really. When I pointed it out to them, they were most upset. So, yeah. Do what you have to do. We've always thought that having stocks in marketplace would be a good punishment for people who let their dogs foul, but apparently it's against the law.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Councillor Mike Islip, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I think Chris, you said that the number of responses you got this consultation was about 420 something, was it? Which, from memory, is greater by an order of magnitude, by a factor of 10 or more, than the number of responses we got to the consultation on council tax, I think. Alex Fitzgerald, correct me if I'm wrong. But this is, I mean, we all know as councillors, we know that this is one of the most problematic and issues of greatest concern to our public and our residents. And the number of responses at over 400 and something demonstrates that. So if I may, Chair, I would just like to move that this committee accepts that the legal test has been met and recommends to executive that they implement the order with the maximum, for the maximum duration of 3 years, with the maximum fine possible, and with the exemptions that, as Chris has set out, which I think are reasonable. So I'd like to move that, Chair, if I may.
I've got a couple of questions coming in from Councillor Scott and Councillor Semple, and then if you'd like to move it, then that would be appreciated.
That's fine, whatever, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Paul Scott, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I'll just second Mike's motion, really. To be honest with you, I think it's the most disgusting thing. And I think the fact that you've got that many people responded to it tells you that, really. And the 2.45 reports a day, I think, a bit on the light side, to say the least. So, yeah, 100% maximum you can actually apply to it, really.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Semple, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, just first of all, I speak as a dog owner all my life. My dog Riley's just come in here now. I've lived on Brigham Road in Cockermouth for 30 odd years. When I first moved in here, the streets around us, Dalton Street, Brigham Road, were festooned with dog muck. That doesn't happen now. So I think sometimes we do need to recognise that things have improved. But the other thing about lockdown, you know, I use Harris Park very regularly, and during lockdown, for some reason, dog fouling was extremely worse. So much so that I ended up taking extra dog bags with me. So I think it is one of these things that, unfortunately, we it's a scourge, isn't it? But I fully support what Councillor Heaslip has said and all the things there, because there's nothing more annoying than a responsible dog owner than an irresponsible dog owner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Semple. Officer Ian Hind, would you like to come in there, Ian?
Can I just ask Chris for some clarification? I don't understand the maximum fine element. Does that mean that the maximum fine is £100, or it is currently and the council can set its own? Or does it mean that the maximum fine is £100 and you're looking to recoup the costs on top of the fine? I'm not quite clear.
Chris, would you like to come back with that?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So the legislation sets out that the maximum fine is £100. We currently, I believe, operate £80, but that was based on the fact that that was the upper limit in the Clean Neighbourhoods and Environment Act 2005. So we can't do it on a cost recovery basis. These are fixed legislative fines, and we unfortunately don't have the scope in which to, in which to go over and above that £100 suggested. Obviously, for some issues, a lower fine may be more appropriate, but like I say, for the reasons outlined, we feel that the highest possible fine available to us is what we would recommend to yourselves, and as we've heard from councillors, would be hopefully put to the executive as well, to include in the order.
Okay, thanks, Christopher. Malcolm, Councillor Granger, would you like to come in again?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Chris. Are dogs still licensed? Do they pay a licence to have them on the road?
No, I believe the licence is only extend to breeders, but all dogs should be chipped now as well, and that's something else that our community services team do get involved in when stray dogs are recovered and things like that. So fines can be issued where owners have failed to get the dogs chipped as well.
Can I come in on that, Chair?
Yeah.
Because I did investigate this while I was an executive member. There used to be national dog licenses. Some piece of legislation many years ago devolved the responsibility for dog licensing to local authorities. I believe we actually have the power as a local authority to license dogs. I don't think anybody's ever had the nerve to suggest that the council introduce a dog licensing scheme. I looked at it and thought, in principle, that's a good idea, but what a good way to lose an election.
Okay. Right. Thanks for that, Mike.
Sorry, if I may just interject there. I believe it would be under the same legislation to introduce a similar licensing requirement for dogs as well. So it would likely come under a PSPO, so it will be subject to the same legal test. I think if you had the evidence base to do so, like Mike says, it might be a bit of a brave move, but I think it'll be very, very difficult to actually satisfy that legal test for proportionality.
Okay. Councillor Joe Holiday. Joe, would you like to come in?
Yeah, just a point on that is you could have somebody from another area come with a dog. And that way they don't have to have a license to come in, they have to have licenses to come across the border.
Okay. Way forward on this in terms of accepting. Does it need to be a recorded vote? Ian? Lee?
I believe Chris was asking that it should be a recorded vote. I think I don't know if there's a way of saying is it unanimous and not going through everybody's name or not.
Yeah, I think we'll just do the recorded vote and then it's audited correctly.
Okay, Chair, is that what you'd like me to do?
Yeah, would you like to move that motion, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, just for the purposes of what's going on, Chair, it is on record that Mike, Councillor Heaslip moved the motion and Councillor Scott seconded it. So, I mean, if you're happy with that, we can proceed.
Yeah, we'll take it from there, Lee. That's fine. Let's go.
Okay, just to clarify the issue of the recorded vote, it'll just be a vote where I go through everyone alphabetically. It won't be specifically recorded as who voted for what in the minutes. So just to distinguish between just the standard vote and the recorded one. So I'll just go through each member, and if you're in favour of the motion, just say your name and then you vote. Councillor Daniels?
Councillor Daniels for the motion.
Councillor Granger?
Councillor Granger for the motion.
Councillor Greeny?
Councillor Greeny for the motion.
Councillor Heaslip?
Councillor Heaslip for the motion.
Councillor Holiday?
Joe?
Councillor Holiday for the motion.
Councillor Kirkbride?
Councillor Kirkbride for the motion.
Councillor McCarran Holmes?
Councillor McCarran Holmes for the motion.
Councillor Scott?
Councillor Scott for the motion.
And Councillor Semple?
Councillor Semple for.
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify. Sorry, Councillor Horsley.
For the motion, thank you.
My apologies. I had you written down as well. I don't know what's happened there. But yeah, just to clarify, Chair, the motion's carried. It was unanimous.
Yeah, thank you for that. With that, I'll close that out, Christopher, if that's okay. That item on the agenda. Thank you for coming along and presenting to us.
That's great. Well, thank you all very much for your time. And I do apologise about the lateness. It will not be happening again.
It's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Take care.
That's item 7 closed out. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, the appointment of a task and finish group to consider the creation of a pandemic response task and finish group. And that's on pages 21 to 24. Reading from the recommendation that a task and finish group is established by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's something that's been discussed over the past 2 meetings. We've put out requests for members to participate in the actual task and finish group. We've got those back. There's 3-4 volunteers, which I think is quite a good number really, because we don't want it too big. I think we want to get this moving fairly quickly. in terms of its importance, given that the actual pandemic is still ongoing and there could be a problem of a second wave. So it's, I think it's imperative that we do get it moving fairly quickly. I hope everybody's had time to read it, and I was hoping that it would be a straight yes, we agree, and we can actually get it moving sometime soon. Mike, would you like to come in?
No, I was just, if I am formally, I don't know. I was just agreeing with what you said, Chair. Yes, let's just adopt it and get on with it.
Yeah, that's right. Is there any questions from any members? Councillor McCann-Holmes, Carney, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. On the bottom of page 23, the terms of reference.
Yes.
It highlights them. I would like to ask if I believe it's essential that we peruse the workforce plan in this.
Okay. Is that something you'd like to? We can just add that to the terms of reference then, I presume. Would you be happy with that?
Can I just check? You mean the council's workforce plan? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's straightforward. Yeah. So is everybody in agreement? We can adopt this? Yeah. Yeah. I see all nods and I don't see any no's, so that's quite good. We'll take that as accepted. And I'll leave it up to you, Ian, in terms of when you want to pull that initial task and finish group together, time and date and that type of thing.
Well, we have the initial, if you remember last meeting, the suggestion was that the Councillor Heaslip and Councillor McCarran-Holmes were interested to get on and find out a bit more about the test, track and trace schemes that are going on.
Yeah.
I've got a date of next Friday morning, I think, if off the top of my head, that will be a session with members of the environmental health team and people who are involved in that process at 11 o'clock. So I'll send that out to everybody shortly. Whether everybody can be involved in that, it's just an initial meeting, but we have got a first information session for that group.
Yeah, that's good. Great.
Chair, can I just ask a question?
Yeah, Lee.
Yeah, well, it's not a question as such. It's just further clarity. You could confirm the membership of the group, please.
Right, not a problem. It's actually contained on page 23.
Yeah, I can see. I've just found it. Yeah, just for the public as well.
Yeah, that's not a problem. The task and finish group membership for this is going to be Councillor Michael Heaslip, Councillor Carney McCarran-Holmes, Councillor Paul Scott, and from the wider membership, Councillor Elaine Lynch.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Again, I'll take that as closed out. Moving on to item 9 on the agenda now. Consideration of overview and scrutiny committee, a section of the Constitution, and this is on pages 25 to 28. I think the way forward from discussions that we've had in the past is the recommendation that the overview and scrutiny committee agrees any suggestions from the committee to submit to the Constitution Review Group for consideration. So it was a case of do we have any comments to go forward to the Constitution Review Group?
I think possibly the section 6, which is the relevant section of the Constitution, was not included in the agenda unless it was.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
So perhaps the best way of dealing with this would be for anybody who has any comments to send them to me, and we can either leave it to the next meeting or agree things via an email route. Basically, the Constitution sets out how the committee deals with its processes. And there's been a question sitting around about whether it has sufficient clarity when it comes to the call-in process.
Yeah.
So if we can get the section 6 sent out and members can comment on whether they think further clarity is needed. I know Councillor Heaslip has looked at it and thinks that it is clear enough, but there have been questions in the past for other members about how that process runs. So unless there's anything major, this is about the wording of that of that description of how the process works, and perhaps that can be cleared up outside committee.
Yeah, I agree with
If
that.
if I can just come in, Chair.
Yeah.
Just to help members, I'll circulate that section of the Constitution. It is also available on the Allerdale website. If it's just simply type in Constitution to the search bar, you can get it. And we are working on making the Constitution more user friendly, so you don't have to scroll through the whole document to get to certain sections. So that's just where we are with that. Thank you.
Right. Is everybody okay with that? Any questions? No, fine. Okay. We can close that out on item on the agenda. Moving on to item 10, which is the forward plan. I don't intend to go through this page by page, given it's a reoccurrence on the agenda. If anybody has any comments on any part of the forward plan, would you like to give them now, please? I'll take that as none, and I'll close it out. Again, the work programme 2020-21, item 11. I'll take that in the same fashion. Pages 45 to 48. If there are any comments forthcoming, I'll take them now.
Yeah, you will have obviously noticed that today's item is not as was advertised in the previous version of the work programme.
No.
Because we had to change things around a little bit to accommodate accommodate a couple of things, including people needing to take holidays and the timing of the processes. I'm sure some of you recall that there was a request for people to join an informal group to look at the resilient community strategy and the economic growth strategy, which was on the agenda for today as being a report about that. But that group hasn't met yet and will do in a couple of weeks' time. So we swapped the things around. Where you see in the programme, where you see in the work programme that it says there will be a presentation later on in the year about the Workington or Maryport. Obviously, you've had the Maryport one today, and the one for the one in the previous version said exactly the same thing, because I didn't know which order they were going to go in. You've had the Maryport one today. We expect the future one to focus on Workington and maybe a short update on Maryport.
Okay, no problem. Do we have any other? Oh, Joe Holiday, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, I assume that on the agenda I've seen we're going to get a report back about the Allerdale Investment Partnership.
Okay.
I think that has been put forward as a request.
Yes.
And we are going to receive a presentation on the Allerdale Investment Partnership as well as the stadium as well. We're going to get an update report on both of those issues.
You will be receiving an invitation to a non-public session on a briefing for councillors on each of those in due course.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to secure dates. People have been on holiday, and I'm just trying to settle dates with colleagues and their diaries.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ian. And we'll probably take it from there, Joe, once we've had the presentations, if there's any issues that you want to consider further, really, I think.
So there isn't going to be a report back today?
No, the report isn't coming today. When do you think it will be, Joe, Ian?
Well, as I say, I'm just waiting for what the two people involved, the chief executive and the program director for Workington. Andrew has been on holiday. Kevin is on holiday.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting to get dates within their diaries in the next. I've asked for them in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm working on it.
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Mike Easley, would you like to come in, Mike? You've got a question or a statement?
Yes, please. Just one thing. I'll just get myself a little bit confused about when we do things like the quarterly performance report and the financial report. Because I see we've got it down for the 15th of January.
16th of October, the next one.
And then one in October. But we only seem to have 2 occasions when we look at a quarterly report. And if my infant school maths is right, there should be 4 occasions.
4 quarters.
Not just 2. It may be that a couple have been missed off the list somewhere. Just I was just confused about that.
No, it isn't. But Alex will provide you with the reasoning.
There's issues just purely around timing. So the quarter 1 report has missed this meeting for you, but will come to your October meeting, and then the quarter 2 report will miss your November-December meeting, so we'll have to come in January. It's just an issue of timing, really. There will be another one that drops very swiftly into the new financial year, but I will look at timings and see if I can make it any better fit with what you've got for the rest of the year. Really, it was just the first one was a little bit delayed because of timings of everyone's meetings.
Chair, I noticed that that report actually goes to executive. Is it next week?
I don't know.
Yes, 2nd of September.
It may be that I don't know, it's maybe not for this year, but maybe for next year, we maybe need to look at timing how these committee meetings fall in such a way that we don't miss things.
Yeah.
If we can, without mucking the timetable up too much. But I think that's for next year. And I'm not suggesting we change all the meeting dates that have already been fixed for this year. But bear in mind when fixing them next year, please.
Okay. Councillor Alan Daniels. Alan, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask Ian regarding the climate change group. I did ask a couple of months ago whether we would be forming a committee. I think Marion was going to be the chair for that, or the lead officer for that, or the lead councillor for that. Be nice to maybe have a meeting this sometime soon, I guess.
An update, Alan. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. My colleague Richard Griffin has been asked to take the lead on that from a staff point of view. I think there is still a question about what the status of that group and who services it, and when it can start operating. But I'm aware that it is a question, and certainly there's been one meeting recently of not quite that group about a particular issue to do with something that is related to the climate change agenda. And I think we will have to try and resolve those issues to get it up and running.
Yeah.
If I could just come in and clarify in terms of the constitution. We did take this to the constitution working group a couple of weeks ago. Sharon Sewell, as head of governance, has got authority to set up that group. So I believe that in terms of the setting up, that authority and delegation is in place. So as soon as we can get it set up, it will be.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Any other questions on the actual work programme? In that case, I'll close that item 11. Moving on to item 12, task and finish group, working group updates, verbal report. I think we only have one task and finish group running at the moment. Is that correct, Ian? And that's the procurement one.
Yes, it is. I'm still waiting. The one that was looking at the waste contract, the new future waste contract.
Right.
I'm again struggling with holidays to get dates for a meeting for that group to basically be closed out, because it only really needs one more meeting. The procurement group is running. Councillor Bell, as you know, as the chair of that group, is having to take much more of very much a back seat at the moment. And I think Councillor Granger has been stepping in as the chair of that group. Perhaps that needs to be confirmed by this group that you're happy the committee that you're happy with Councillor Granger taking on the chairing of that group, because in theory any changes to the group are meant to be confirmed by the committee.
Yeah.
So Councillor Granger can perhaps update members on what's been going on if he so wishes. Yeah.
Malcolm, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, we've had a couple of good meetings. We had quite a few meetings with officers. Brendan was very good. We're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel now. We're just asking for how the committees were set up on the procurement committee, and it went well the other night, and I think it's going well. It is. And I had a crack with Brendan the other morning, and he's going to get back to Ian, and Ian, Brendan's going to keep you, Sally, myself, and Ian in the loop, and Carmel. So you'll find out as fast as I do, Ian.
Okay. Thanks, Malcolm. Just touching on that point, is everybody in agreement with Malcolm taking over and comfortable with Malcolm taking over chairmanship of that task and finish group? I know I sit on it, and I'm more than comfortable with it, to be honest. So
thumbs and nods.
There's plenty of nods, and I can't see any no's. So I'll take that as a yes, that we're all comfortable with it. You've even got a thumbs up there, Malcolm. Well done.
Thank you for your confidence, Mr. Eagle.
Yeah, can I just point something out? I don't know if anybody else picked up on it, but just going back to the work programme slightly, I don't know if you noticed, but Chris was alluding to the fact that obviously there's something else going to have to be slotted into the work programme about the other aspect of dog issues. So I don't know when that's coming, but I'll see if I can find out before I publish this again.
See if you can push him for next week rather than next month. Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Well, with that, I'd just like to thank you all for attending today. Much appreciated. Thanks for the officers for their support as well. And I wish everybody a good bank holiday weekend. Take care. Thank you. And with that, the meeting's closed.